Hello everybody, Natalia here, and today I'm really excited to bring you my first Q&A video. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers, so in order to celebrate that, I decided to do kind of a casual Q&A, and I got a lot of really good questions. Alright, let's go ahead and get right into it. Alright, our first question is, what is your favorite genre to write about? I would definitely say YA with a hint of fantasy thrown in. The second question is, what kind of computer do you use? I use a Lenovo laptop. I just have my questions there. It's pretty simple. I've had it for 4 years now, I think. I got it my second year of college. So yeah, I've had it for about 4 years and it works really well for me. So I really love this thing. The third question is, for your Q&A video, I would love to hear more about your editing process. How do you decide when you've gone too far in depth on something too soon? So once I have a finished draft, the first thing I do is just take a break from it, because once I've finished writing it, I've been looking at that work and thinking about those characters for so long that I'm kind of burnt out on it. So I like to take usually about a month off from that story. So in this time that I'm taking a month off, I will typically print, here's Mumu, she wants to say hello. I will typically print out the entire draft if possible. That way, while I am editing, I can have the physical pages in front of me, which I really enjoy. I like to be able to scribble things out, highlight things, make notes in the margins. That just really helps me with my editing process. Okay, so a little bit more about the editing process. I go through a few different rounds of edits. The first round of edits is mostly just for figuring out the story and the plot line. So I figure out if I have left major plot holes, if I have started subplots and then not really finished them, or if there are a bunch of storylines that I never really tied up nicely. So that's mainly structural edits that I do that first time around. So the second time around, I'm going to try to really clean up my language, make the descriptions much more flowery and accurate, and fill it with imagery, and make sure all my words are spelled correctly and everything is grammatically correct. Stuff like that is going to be the second round of edits, because I don't like doing that in the first round, because I might end up cutting a lot of it. So I'd rather do all the structural edits first and make sure the story itself is really sound, and then move on to kind of the small detail edits. And then how do you decide when you've gone too far in depth on something too soon? This isn't something that I think you can figure out right away. I'm definitely one of those writers that wants to get the entire story down first before I think too hard about what I've written. Again, if it's something that's holding you back, then certainly go back, cut it out, you know, save the chunk of text that you've removed so that you can always go back to it if you need it, but just cut whatever's giving you trouble and then write on through that. Because I think once you're at the end, then you'll be able to say, oh, I gave the readers too much information too early on, or maybe you didn't give them the information they needed until too late in the novel. So you can't really know these things until you've written the novel and you can look at it as a whole and really figure out the structure of it. The fourth question is, when you are writing, do you do world building, subplotting, character building as you write, or before you start your first draft? So I like to try to get most of this done before I start my first draft, but I've also learned that I am not 100% a plotter, because I will plot things out and then I'll let myself kind of explore the world and explore my characters and my mind. And quite often things happen that surprise me. I certainly try to build up the world and the subplots and my characters before I get started, just so that I have a basic understanding of them. But really the bulk of all that happens, the bulk of all that development happens while I am writing the novel. Question 5 is, how much detail should you plan out for a novel? This is different for everybody. There are some people that just need to know the beginning of their story and the end of their story, and then they just fill it in as they go. For me, I need to know kind of the big plot points that I need to hit as I'm writing the novel. So I might have 20 plot points that I know I need to have kind of as the backbone structure of my story, but then between each of those points, I let myself explore. But again, this is going to be different for everybody. There are some writers out there that have everything planned out before they even sit down and start to write. It just depends on how your process works, how much control you want over your story. I can't just be a pantser like some people because I go on tangents and I get lost and I don't know what I'm doing. So that's why I definitely need to have that structure of plot points. So I'd say I have like a medium level of detail already planned out before I sit down to start writing. Question 6 is, how do you deal with difficult scenes? Now I'm going to take this to mean, how do I deal with any scene that like I'm struggling with and that's difficult to write for me? So number 1, I want to figure out if I've gone in the wrong direction with the scene, because that's often what has happened to me. If I'm struggling to write a scene and I'm really having to try to push myself through it, that usually means that that scene shouldn't be in the novel to begin with. So sometimes I have to reevaluate, go back to my outline and figure out, okay, am I totally going the wrong direction with this scene? Does it need to be completely cut? But if it is a scene that I need in the novel and I'm struggling through it, 1, I will listen to music and really try to get imagery in my head and get visuals in my head of that scene so that I get more excited about writing it. And then honestly, I just have to push through, because writing is typically one of the hardest parts for me. So even if it's trash, even if it's horrible writing, I need to get that down and get that scene written so that I can move on. And then in my rounds of edits, I can always come back and fix it and make it pretty and make sure that it is exactly what I need. All right, question 7 is a great one, and it is, what do you do if you have too many ideas? Oh man, I feel like many writers have dealt with this in the past. This is kind of the shiny new idea syndrome. So what has happened to me in the past is I will be working on a book, and then right when it starts getting hard, usually when I hit Act 2, I'll start wanting to write a new book, and I'll start getting excited about a new book because I always feel like, oh, this other book is the one that I really want to write. This other book is the one that I'll get through and that I'll love, but that never really happens. So if you are in the middle of writing a book and you're getting all these shiny new ideas, then honestly, my best advice is to try to either push those ideas away and try to keep them locked up until you finish the manuscript you're working on, or entertain the idea of that other idea, write some things down, plot a little bit, but don't let yourself get distracted from the novel that you're working on. It is so easy to just say, this novel that I'm writing is getting too hard, it's not going the way I wanted it to, let me put it aside and start something new. But that new project will get to the same point where it is not easy and you're struggling. So you can't continually abandon your current manuscript for a shiny new idea. Now, if you haven't even started writing yet, let's say you have 5 ideas and you don't know which book you want to start, what I do is I write down all of the ideas I have for each story, I guess. So for me, it's always a process of elimination. I get all of my ideas out, I look at them side by side, and I just have to say, okay, which one is really calling to me right now? Which one do I have more inspiration and muse for? And that's the story that I'll choose. All right, question 8 is, how do you plan your stories? For example, do you have a notebook for each story, and what do you write about in each notebook? Okay, so my first answer would be yes, I do have a notebook for each story. So I have a few notebooks here to show you. Sketchbook, really nice pink notebook, and then I have this little glittery one. So this glittery one that I'm carrying is the notebook I've been using on the go for my fairy novel, because this fits in my bag really nicely. So this pink notebook was mainly the planning for Highborn. So let me show you a little bit of what's in here. Let's see, I have a basic sketch I did of the main character. So I will sketch in my notebooks. I will write down like information on the characters. For example, here's some information on, can you see that? Here's some information on Rowan. And then the main character, Blair Woods, is in here as well. I have my query possibilities, I have an outline. But yeah, so that was that notebook. And then I have this sketchbook, which I got at the beginning of October. Here are my initial brainstorming notes for my fairy novel. So I have all those written out, and a lot of this has changed, but those were just the initial ideas I had before I ever outlined or started plotting anything. And then you can see I also went ahead and scribbled down the brainstorming ideas for my other 2 nano novel ideas, and you can see that this one doesn't even have a full page. So that's how I decided that that novel needed to be cut. I wasn't ready to write that novel. And then here we go. Then I start doing outlining pages here. So I've outlined Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. So I've got a bunch of stuff here that are in these notebooks. Concept art, a writing map. So I do have one notebook for every big story idea I'm working on, for every novel that I'm writing. And then within that notebook, I'll put down anything. I'll do character sketches. I will do an outline. I'll do notes for future edits. I will write down the playlist that I've been creating for that novel. So anything can go in that notebook as long as it pertains to the novel that I'm working on. All right, question 9 is, how do you do brainstorming for a new writing project? So let's talk about the brainstorming I did for my fairy novel. So I was hiking this beautiful trail. It was the end of summer. Everything was really green and vibrant still. And I was standing on this little bridge, and there was a trickle of water going under this bridge, and I started thinking, this place feels so magical. This is a place that fairies would live. And that initially sparked the idea for me. So once I had that idea, then I just started thinking about it. I started listening to music. Like, I have a whole YouTube playlist that is just fairy music, mermaid music, elf music. It's just great. It's just all these fantasy, magical kind of songs. So I get the initial idea, and then I start looking for music that kind of encourages those ideas and helps inspire me more. I'm a very visual person, so I need to start visualizing the characters, visualizing the setting. I need to try to picture what these characters are going to do, how they're going to interact. And then once I start doing this, I start writing everything down. Even I could have 2 ideas right next to each other that are completely at odds with one another, but I write everything down so that when I'm ready to start outlining and really building the structure of my novel, I have everything written down so I know that I haven't forgotten anything. So really for me, it's just listen to a lot of music, try to get inspired by images, and then just go with the flow and write down every single idea you have. All right, question 10 is, if you had to write in only 1 hour of the day, every day, which hour would you choose? That's a really interesting question. So I would choose 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, because the morning time is when I am just waking up from rest. I am really relaxed. The house is really quiet. There's not much going on. So that's a really good time for me to get up, get my coffee, and then just get right into my manuscript. All right, so there are actually 4 questions that I'm going to put within kind of question 10, because it's one person that asked all 4 of them. So the next question is, what is the hardest thing for you to write, and how do you overcome it? Dialogue, actually, is a little bit tricky for me. And the way that I deal with it is I just write it for the first draft. It doesn't really matter how it sounds or how it looks. And then when I come back through to do edits, I read that aloud. So I struggle through it for the first draft, and then I come back during edits and I read it aloud. And if it does not sound like something people would say, if it doesn't sound like an actual conversation people would have, then I have to do edits on it, and I have to clean it up and make it sound more casual and more relaxed and just more natural. All right, the third question from this user is, what do you find the easiest to write? Drama. Drama, drama, drama. I really like when there is a lot going on and when there are lots of characters interacting at one time. I much prefer writing kind of the actions versus the inner monologue that my character has. Does that make sense? All right, next question is, this is a really good one. If you weren't interested in writing, what would be your biggest life goal? What I would be doing is striving as hard as I can to achieve a very simple, sustainable lifestyle. My dream right now is to build what is called an Earth ship. If you have never heard about that, go ahead and type it into Google. It's a sustainable dwelling that is built out of recycled materials, and it is powered with solar energy and it's sustainable. It gathers all of its own water. So it's a really positive, environmentally friendly kind of structure that I want to build and live in. I don't want to have any bills later in life. I don't want to be paying rent or a mortgage or having to pay off an expensive car that I bought. I don't want any of that stuff. I don't want any bills. I just want to have my Earth ship. I want to rescue a bunch of animals and just live very simply. So I think, going back to that question, what would be your biggest life goal? Get out of the city, build my own home, and live a very simple life free of bills and financial stress. All right, so question 11, because this is a new user now. This is another really great one. I see many author tubers talking about how they wanted to be an author all their life and how they've always written. I am not like that. I've only gotten into writing when I was 19 and decided I wanted to be an author when I was 22. Does this matter if you want to become an author? Also, is it necessary to do a creative writing course? So, I don't think it matters at all how old you are when you decide you want to do something. I didn't finish my first novel until my freshman year of college. So I was 18 or 19 when I first finished that, and then I've been working really hard since then. But I don't think it matters at all how old you are when you decide that you want to do this. There are many authors that I've read and learned about. They didn't even start writing until maybe they were 30 or 40 or 50, and they decided that they were done with the rat race and they wanted to pursue their dream of writing. So who cares how old you are? It really doesn't matter as long as you are willing to put in the hard work and effort to achieve your goals. And then for the second part of that question, is it necessary to do a creative writing course? Oh man, so I actually majored in creative writing at my university. I am an English major with a concentration in creative writing, and honestly, it was frustrating because I really thought that my creative writing courses were going to really better my skills and teach me a lot, and they didn't, to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed the critique groups were kind of fun just to experience that kind of setting, taking in your work and reading it out loud and then having people critique you. That was really interesting because it kind of breaks down those walls. I think a lot of us are nervous about sharing our writing with others, especially if we're going to get harsh criticism back. So it was beneficial to be part of those critique groups, but honestly, my creative writing major and my creative writing courses are not what taught me how to write at all. Plus, they're expensive. They're extremely expensive to go to college and take creative writing courses. So if anything, I would say the best thing you can do is write as much and as often as possible. Watch YouTube videos, read blog posts by authors, go and listen to authors speak. Just try to get as involved as you can and work as hard as you can, because I came into that creative writing major having already written 2 novels. So I was already really ahead of the game, and I was ahead of many of my peers. But the reason I was ahead isn't because I was taking classes, it's because I was busting my ass writing novels, figuring out how the craft worked. So sit down and write, and that is what is going to teach you how to be the best writer you can be. My university would really love to hear me say that, right? All right, question 12 is, what are your thoughts on fantasy worlds with no magic? Is magic required to classify a novel as fantasy? Personally, I would say absolutely not. I classify Way of Spears as a fantasy. It's definitely not high fantasy, it's not epic fantasy, but I definitely classify it as fantasy because it is in a different realm, a different world, but there's no magic going on there. So I guess everybody that you talk to is going to have a different definition of what fantasy is and what you need to have a fantasy world, but if you just want my opinion, I would say no. You definitely do not need magic and magic systems in order to have a fantasy world. Question 13 is, I'd like to know how you came to your decision to self-publish and if you would prefer that over traditional publishing. So this is a really good question because I thought about self versus traditional publishing for a really long time. I decided to self-publish for a few different reasons. One is because I'm a bit of a control freak and I hate the idea of taking this piece of work that I've spent so much time on and I've really poured my heart into and signing it over to somebody, selling it to them. I don't like the idea of that because they can do whatever they want with it. Their editor can make me change things. They get to put whatever kind of cover on it they want. What if it's a horrible cover and I don't want that cover on my novel? You know, they get to choose the release date. They get to choose all of that. And then in addition to that, new undiscovered debut authors are not going to get the kind of attention and publicity that big New York Times bestselling authors receive. So even if you are traditionally published, you're going to have to be marketing yourself. You're going to have to be doing social media, talking to your readers, and getting yourself out there. There are certainly benefits to traditional publishing. For example, you can get into bookstores. Maybe your book will be on shelves in Barnes & Noble or Walmart or Target, and my novel is not. However, my novel is for sale on Amazon. It is for sale through CreateSpace, so the people that want to buy it can certainly go out and do that. So before I decided to self-publish, before I knew that was a thing, I was really scared and nervous about never achieving publication, and I was nervous that I would spend so many years and such a large portion of my life writing these novels that no one would ever like and ever want to publish. And that just broke my heart, this idea that I could spend so much time and effort and love on something and then never see it brought into the world. And I hate that. Like, have you guys ever seen that movie, The Words, with Bradley Cooper in it? And he's working so hard, and it's so depressing because the editors are telling him, or the agents are telling him, you know, it's a good book, but it's just not the book right now. It's not the book for the market. And that is so frustrating to me. So I really like the fact that with self-publishing, you're taking all that into your own hands, because there will always be a reader out there that is looking for the book you are writing. So yes, being traditionally published is cool because you can get into bookstores and you can tell people, oh yeah, my book got published by Random House or Penguin or whatever publishing house you're really into. So yeah, that is awesome, and it's something to really be proud of. But self-publishing has been my route because I wanted to know that when I spent months and months and months and years of my life on a novel, it was going to be out there in the world. And if 5 people love it and read it, then that makes it worth it to me. My book does not need to be read by millions and billions of people all across the world for me to feel successful and for me to feel like my work and all the time I put into it was really worth it. I also talked about this in a video I made way back when I was doing Camp NaNoWriMo. It's a vlog, it's a car vlog, so I'm going to go ahead and link that. I don't know which side it'll be linked on. One of these sides, I'm going to link to that video, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on self versus traditional publishing, you can just click that video. Now the last question is, how do you feel about named chapters? Do you think they add to the story or serve as a distraction that takes readers out of that one more page mindset? I don't really name my chapters, but that doesn't mean I don't enjoy when other people do it. I think Laini Taylor, she named all the chapters in her, in her Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy, and I loved it because I found that her chapters were named with a short phrase that you could find within that chapter. So I would like read the chapter name and then I'd read it and start looking for where she got that phrase from within the chapter. So I think it's a cool way to kind of put a unique spin on your chapter. However, the only setback is that I feel like I typically see named chapters in children's books, and I don't know why that is. I certainly don't think it's a bad thing to want to name your chapters, but in my personal experience, all my chapter names have sounded really cheesy, which is one of the reasons I don't do it. So I would just prefer to have, you know, beautiful Roman numerals or, you know, just a numbering system for my chapter headings rather than a name or a title. Alright, so this video is pretty long and it may have been a little bit rambly, but I really appreciate all the questions that you guys sent me. Thank you so much. This has been really fun to film. If you feel like I didn't answer your question fully enough or you have any follow-up questions for me, please let me know and then I will just respond in the comments or on Twitter or Tumblr or wherever you send me your questions. Thank you so much for watching and I will catch you in the next video. Alright, bye guys!